The Stolen Baccilus by H.G. Wells for AEC4 paper. Top 200 MCQs. Who is the main speaker at the beginning of the prose The Stolen Baccilus? The bacteriologist. What is placed under the microscope? A glass slide. What does the glass slide contain? Bacillus of cholera. How does the pale-faced man react to looking through the microscope? He is not accustomed to it. What does the pale-faced man do with his hand while looking through the microscope? Covers his disengaged eye. What does the bacteriologist suggest the visitor adjust? The focus screw. What does the visitor see under the microscope? Little streaks and shades of pink. What might the little particles do according to the visitor? Multiply and devastate a city. What does the visitor do after looking through the microscope? Holds the glass slip to the window. Are the germs on the slide alive? No. What has been done to the germs on the slide? Stained and killed. What does the bacteriologist wish? To kill and stain every cholera germ in the universe. What does the pale man suggest about having living germs? The bacteriologist would not care to have them. What is the bacteriologist obliged to keep? Living bacteria. What does the bacteriologist show the visitor? A sealed tube with living cholera bacteria. What does the bacteriologist call the tube? Bottled cholera. How does the pale man react to the tube of living bacteria? He shows satisfaction. What does the pale man say about the tube? It is deadly. What kind of note did the visitor bring? A note of introduction. What is notable about the visitor's appearance? Black hair and deep grey eyes. What is the visitor's manner described as? Nervous. What is the bacteriologist's usual company like? Phlegmatic and deliberate. What does the bacteriologist say the tube contains? Pestilence imprisoned. What could happen if the tube is broken into a water supply? Death would be released upon the city. How can the cholera bacteria be detected by microscope? What does the bacteriologist say about the bacteria's ability to be smelled or tasted? They cannot be smelled or tasted. What would happen if the bacteria were released? They would cause mysterious, untraceable death. What relationships does the bacteriologist mention would be affected by the pestilence? Husband and wife, child and mother. What does the bacteriologist say the bacteria would travel? Along water mains and streets. What does the bacteriologist say about boiling water? It would kill the bacteria. Where else could the bacteria end up according to the bacteriologist? In salads and in ices. Where could the bacteria be drunk by children? In public fountains. Where could the bacteria soak into? The soil. What could happen once the bacteria get into the water supply? The metropolis could be decimated. What rhetorical device does the bacteriologist admit to using? Overstatement. How does the bacteriologist describe the bacteria in the tube? Quite safe in the tube. What is the color of the visitor's hair? Black. What is the visitor's expression described as? Haggard. What is the visitor's attitude towards the bacteria? Morbidly interested. What does the bacteriologist say about the size of the bacteria? They are minute particles. What does the bacteriologist say is needed to see the bacteria? The highest powers of the microscope. What does the bacteriologist say about catching the bacteria after release? It would be too late. What does the bacteriologist say about the bacteria lying dormant? They can lie dormant in ices. What does the bacteriologist say about the bacteria in mineral water makers' wells? They could get washed into them. What does the bacteriologist say about the bacteria in a horse trots? They could be ready to be drunk. What does the bacteriologist say about the bacteria reappearing in springs and wells at unexpected places? What does the bacteriologist say about the speed of death caused by the bacteria? Swift and terrible. What does the bacteriologist say about the dignity of death caused by cholera? Full of pain and indignity. What is the bacteriologist's attitude towards the danger? Responsible and cautious. What does the bacteriologist emphasize at the end? The bacteria are quite safe in the tube. What did the pale-faced man call the anarchist? Fools. According to pale-faced man, what do anarchists use? Bombs. What did the pale-faced man suggest was more effective than bombs? Disease germs. Who interrupted the conversation with a knock? The bacteriologist's wife. What did the bacteriologist's wife say at the door? Just a minute, dear. What was the visitor's doing when the bacteriologist returned, looking at the watch? How long did the visitor say he had stayed? An hour. What time did the visitor say it was? 12 minutes to 4. At what time did the visitor say he should have left? 3:30. Why did the visitor say he stayed so long? The things were interesting. What did the visitor say about staying longer? He could not stop a moment longer. What did the visitor have at 4 o'clock? An engagement. Who accompanied the visitor to the door? The bacteriologist. What did the bacteriologist think about the visitor's ethnicity? He was neither Teutonic or non-Latin. How did the bacteriologist describe the visitor? A morbid product. What did the bacteriologist notice about the visitor's interest? He gloated on the disease germs. What did the bacteriologist do after the visitors left? Check the bench and writing table. What did the bacteriologist search for? The tube of bacteria. Where did the bacteriologist think he might have left the item? On the hall tube. What did the bacteriologist shout in the hall? Minnie. Who responded to the bacteriologist's shout? His wife. What did Minnie say the bacteriologist had in his hand? Nothing. What exclamation did the bacteriologist make upon realizing the loss? Blue ruin. What did the bacteriologist do after his exclamation? Ran to the front door. What was the bacteriologist wearing on his feet when he ran outside? Carpet slippers. What did Minnie do when she heard the door slam? Ran to the window. What did Minnie see down the street? A slender man getting into a cab. How was the bacteriologist behaving in the street? Running and gesticulating wildly. What happened to one of the bacteriologist's slippers? It came off. What did Minnie think about her husband's actions? He had gone mad. Why did Minnie blame for her husband's behavior? His signs. What did Minnie do after her husband ran out? Opened the window. What did Minnie consider doing after opening the window? Called after her husband. What did the slender man do when he saw the bacteriologist? Pointed at him and spoke to the cabman. What did the cabman do after the slender man spoke to him? Drove off quickly. How did the cab leave? With the whip swishing and horses' feet clattering. Who was in the pursuit of the cab? The bacteriologist. What did Minnie do after the cab and her husband disappeared? Strained out of the window. What did Minnie think about her husband's eccentricity? He was eccentric. What did Minnie decide to do after thinking about her husband? Go after him. What did Minnie put on before leaving? Her bonnet. What did Minnie take with her? His shoes, hat, and an overcoat. What did Minnie do on the doorstep? Hailed a cab. What did Minnie tell the cabman to look for? A gentleman in a velveteen coat and no hat. How did the cabman respond to Minnie's request? He agreed matter-of-factly. What color was the horse pulling Minnie's cab? Ginger colored. What was the reaction of the cabman and loafers at Haverstock Hill? They were startled. What did old Tootles say about the cabman? That's Eric's. What did the ostler boy say about the cabman? He is using his whip. What did Tommy Biles say when he saw the next cab? Here's another lunatic. What is seen clawing out of the cab? The bacteriologist. Who is seen clawing out of the cab? The bacteriologist. What does the group around the cabman's shelter do as the chase unfolds? Become unanimated and shout in encouragement. What phrase is not shouted by the group? Stop the thief. Who says she's a goer? She is. The ostler boy. What does old Tootles exclaim about the situation? Strike me giddy. What surprises old Tootles about the next cab? It's a field male or female this time. According to old Tootles, who is following whom? The woman is following the man. What does someone say Minnie is carrying in her hand? A high hat. What is the general mood of the crowd as Minnie passes by, applauding and amused? How does Minnie feel about the crowd's reaction? She does not like it. What is Minnie determined to do as she rides in the cab? Find her husband. Who is driving the cab in which Minnie is riding? Old George. What is the man in the foremost cab holding together the little tube? What is the man's mood as he rides in his cab? A mixture of fear and exultation. What is the man mostly afraid of? Being caught before he can accomplish his purpose. What larger fear does the man also have? The awfulness of his crime. What emotion is stronger than the man's fear? Exultation. Who are radical and valiant? Famous anarchist. What does the man plan to do with the tube? Break into a reservoir. How did the man get into the laboratory? By forging a letter of introduction. What does the man hope to achieve by his actions? Gain fame and recognition. How does the man feel about people in his past? They ignored and neglected him. What does the man want to teach the world? What it means to isolate a man. What street does the man recognize during the chase? Grange, St. Andrew's Street. How far behind is the bacteriologist during the chase? 50 yards. What does the man do to encourage his cabman to go faster? Offers him more money. How much money does the man find in his pocket? Half a sovereign. How does the cabman respond to the offer of more money? Accepts and speeds up. What does the man do with the glass tube as the cab sways? Holds it on the apron to preserve his balance. What happens to the glass tube? It cracks and breaks. What does the man see on the apron after the tube breaks? 2 or 3 drops of moisture. How does the man react to the broken tube? It curses and stares dismally. What does the man shudder at the thought of? The filthy death. What does the man consider himself after the accident? A martyr. What does the man wonder about cholera? If it hurts as much as they say. What does the man do to make sure he will be infected? Drinks the remaining drop from the tube. Why does the man drink the last drop? To make sure he will not fail. How does the man realize after drinking the drop there is no further need to escape the bacteriologist? Where does the man tell the cabman to stop? Wellington Street. What happens as the man gets out of the cab? He slips on the step. How does the man's head feel as he gets out? Queer. What does the man believe about the cholera poison? It is a rapid stuff. What was the crowd's reaction to the chase? Applause and shouting. What does the Oslo boy say about Minnie's cab? She is a goer, she is. What is the main emotion of the anarchist as he sits in the cab after breaking the tube? Dismay. What does the anarchist hope to become after drinking the poison? A martyr. What does the anarchist think about the death he is facing? It is a filthy. What does the anarchist do to ensure he is infected? Drinks the last drop. After drinking the drop, what does the anarchist decide about running? He no longer needs to run. What physical effect does the poison have as the anarchist leaves the cab? He feels dizzy and sleeps. Where does the anarchist stand after leaving the cab? On the pavement. What is the anarchist's physical pose as he waits? Arms folded upon his breast. What feeling does the anarchist pose upon? Tragedy. What does the sense of imminent death after the anarchist? Dignity. How does the anarchist greet the bacteriologist? With a defiant laugh. What phrase does the anarchist shout? Vive, anarchy. What does the anarchist claim to have done? Drunk the cholera. What does the anarchist say is now abroad? The cholera. How does the bacteriologist look at the anarchist from his cab? Curiously through his spectacles. What does the bacteriologist realize about his visitor? He is an anarchist. What does the bacteriologist do when about to get out of the cab? Opens the apron as if to descend. What does the anarchist do as the bacteriologist prepares to get out? Waves a dramatic farewell. Where does the anarchist go after waving farewell? Towards Waterloo Bridge. What does the anarchist do as he walks away? Jostles his infected body against as many people as possible. What is bacteriologist's reaction to Minnie's arrival with his things? Barely surprised. What does Minnie bring to the bacteriologist? His hat, shoes, and overcoat. What does the bacteriologist say to Minnie about bringing his things? Very good of you to bring my things. What is the bacteriologist lost in as Minnie arrives? A contemplation of the receding anarchist. What does the bacteriologist tell Minnie to do? Get in the cab. What does Minnie now feel absolutely convinced of? The bacteriologist is mad. Who directs the cabman home? Minnie. What does Minnie ask the bacteriologist to put on? His shoes. What does the bacteriologist do as the cab turns? Put on his shoes. What strikes the bacteriologist as the cab turns? Something grotesque. How does the bacteriologist react to his thought? He laughs. What does the bacteriologist say immediately after laughing? It is really very serious though. What does the bacteriologist tell Minnie about the visitor? He is an anarchist. What does the bacteriologist want Minnie not to do? Faint. What did the bacteriologist want to do to the visitor? Astonish him. What did the bacteriologist show the visitor? A new species of bacterium. What does the bacteriologist say the new species of bacterium causes? Blue patches on monkeys. What did the bacteriologist claim the new bacterium was? Asiatic cholera. What did the anarchist intend to do with the tube? Poison the water of London. What does the bacteriologist say the anarchist might have done to London? Made things look blue. What animals does the bacteriologist mention were affected by the bacterium? Kitten, 3 puppies, and a sparrow. What color did the animal turn? Blue. What is the bacteriologist's main concern now? Preparing more of the bacterium. What does the bacteriologist say about the trouble and expense? He will have all the trouble and expense of preparing more. Why does Minnie want the bacteriologist to put on his coat? They might meet Mrs. Jabber. What does the bacteriologist say Mrs. Jabber is not? A draft. What does Minnie insist on despite the hot day? Wearing a coat. What does the bacteriologist say about wearing a coat on a hot day? He questions the reason. What is Minnie's concern about Mrs. Jabber? She is a gossip. What does the bacteriologist finally say about the goat? About the coat? Oh, very well. What does the bacteriologist's attitude towards Minnie's show? Amusement and affection. What does the bacteriologist's story reveal about the tube's contents? It was a harmless blue staining bacterium. What does the bacteriologist say happened to the animals exposed to the bacterium? They turned blue. What is the comic twist at the end of the story? The anarchist will only turn blue. What is the bacteriologist's main convenience at the end? Preparing more of the blue bacterium. What is the overall tone of the ending? Comic and ironic.